for content purposes.
Right.
Okay. I don't want to make you late.
We're all good. We are live, and we're gonna be starting in just a moment.
Okay. We're live already?
We are live already, baby.
Oh,
The Candid Conversations. Thank you all so much for hopping on and joining us. And if you're gonna be watching this afterwards, my name is McShan with eXp Realty, and I am so excited to have the lovely Angela Carter with us today for the Whiskey Wine Down.
yes.
So before we get started, I first and foremost want to just say, thoughts and prayers out to everyone in Florida as we just kind of brace for natural disaster and hurricanes and so forth. So just keeping them in our thoughts and prayers at this time. But as we think about that, we also want to continue to keep them lifted. And if there's anything else that we can do, as we already know, there will be support needed to keep them in mind as you all make plans and arrangements and so forth to support however possible. All right. Well, Angela, we're here today for Candid Conversation. So first and foremost, introduce yourself, tell the people about yourself and what do you do, how long you been in the business, the whole jazz of your journey.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm Angela. I am with Guaranteed Rate. I've been with Guaranteed Rate for about 3 years, but I've been in the industry for 5. So, what made me come into the industry, transparency, is I was like, I need to pay down some debt. So I took it on, as a part-time job, right? And as I was doing it as a part-time job, I really grew into the fact that helping people, loving it, helping them reach their goal. I have a background in finance. Got my master's in it. So that is, something I'm passionate about. So being able to help somebody get to that goal of home ownership with that is like a whole other realm. So I jumped ship and I was like, all right, I'm going to just take a chance and go. And I haven't looked back. I love it. I
That's
enjoy it.
awesome.
So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time. We're not going to be here long today, but we more so just want to just talk about things that are going on in the market. And one of our connection points is that we both kind of found our way to our industries through, again, like debt plans. So I was getting married and we had that finance conversation. We were like, so how much debt do you have? How much debt do I have? And I was like, okay, so I'm going to handle mine. I was like, what can I do legally to just
Right.
come up on a
Legally,
good
that's
little
the key.
lick? But ultimately, just getting into the business of real estate, just being able to leverage more of the marketing skills, helping people, and really relying on the education background. And that's why I like to do things like this, because I feel like a lot of people just are not knowledgeable of certain aspects of the process, or not always knowledgeable of all of their options. So that's one of my biggest things of like not necessarily steering people to choose one decision over another,
Yeah.
but making sure that everybody is familiar with processes and understand what's going on, and also ultimately know what are all of their options, which is great
All the
timing today.
options. There's a
Right.
lot of them. So you got
And
to
we
stay
can't
tuned.
make them for you, but we can
Yeah.
make sure that you're aware.
Yes.
So with that in mind, what would you share as far as kind of the state of the market? I think that's one aspect that people are interested in coming from real estate professionals. So we also work together on a frequent basis, and we also have a decent clientele of business. So
Yeah.
in your perspective, what are you kind of seeing in the market right now, and what are you seeing as kind of a frequent, uh, recurring
Well, every
themes?
day the market makes me want to be like, you know what? I'm just going to, you know,
Just walk away.
just walk away. No, I'm just kidding. To be honest with you, I see a lot of apprehension in the market, because there's a lot of unknowns. So that's what you see right now. Like even with, how the Fed is raising interest rates to kind of combat inflation. It's because they're like, is this working? Is it not? And they do that to try to help reduce inflation, but it's still the unknown. Like we're still walking in a volatile market, so like things are thrown every day to where you're like, okay, they're going up again,
Right,
so
right.
I think a lot of people are apprehensive, when entering into the market, for purchasing a home, because they're like, well, I know interest rates have gone up, or the value of houses. I hear that there's a recession coming. I hear that there's a market crash coming. Like there's so many different pieces of information that people don't research. They just hear their friend talking about it or see a meme on Facebook. So there's a lot of apprehension. And when there is apprehension, what do? You're like, okay, let me just sit for a second and not do anything because I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to make a mistake. I think the same thing happened when COVID first happened. You had the rates that were, they're like pew, high, and then they dropped low, and then they dropped in the middle. It was just, nobody knew what was going to happen with COVID. And as time progressed, it started to stabilize. And then, as you saw, everybody and their mothers was going to try to find a house.
Right, right. Because the financing was so affordable, or just less expensive than
Yeah.
it is now.
They would tell you, oh, it's like buying a house with cash. So you had a lot of people that were in the market due to that. So from what I've seen is there's a lot of apprehension just because there's not knowledge as far as what's going to happen, but also is it going to change for the better or the worse?
Right, right. And I think those are absolutely valid concerns, and that's something that you would consider as you make any major decision, especially something as large as a house.
Yeah.
And real estate goes in cycles.
Yep.
So I think just sharing that is a valid piece of making sure that people are informed. As with any
Yes.
investment and so forth, you will have times where we're going up and then we're going to correct a little bit, but then we're going to go up. So it's almost like we have this overall scale of increases, but there may be
Ye-
some low points. But overall, collectively, real estate tends to appreciate. But I
Yes.
definitely think you got to be mindful in making sure that you're financially stable and secure to where, like, if say we do go into times, because there that is a possibility to where, like, right now we are seeing some pricing corrections where home
Yeah.
values are kind of taking a little dip. Now the
Yeah.
benefit is most people still have equity, so that's why
Yeah.
on the real estate side we don't necessarily consider that like a crash, because that means if you can still sell your home today and walk away with money, that makes sense. Because in that case, why would you say let your home go into foreclosure if you say can no longer afford it? You would sell it
Right.
and take a profit,
Yeah.
versus when you cannot sell your home for the value that you currently owe on it. Now we have a very big problem.
Yeah.
But that's not where we are right now. So I think that's definitely like a clear example of what these different messages can make people
Yeah. And I think
fearful of.
especially in Texas, right? Like Texas is a different beast when it comes to real estate. So it's like everybody wants to move here. So I think you'll see more stagnant and, like you said, maybe a little dip, but to see it like drastically change, I don't imagine that, just because you have people flooding trying to get here. So
Right,
that
right.
it's always going to be competitive. It's always going to be desired,
So many
for that.
jobs, opportunities, and so forth, and more are continuing to come to the city, which also brings
Yes,
people, which brings
exactly.
entertainment, which brings
Yes.
business, which bring, like, all those things kind of tie into each other. So definitely
Yep.
different aspects to consider. But I definitely have seen the impact on my side, just especially like, say for instance, with new construction. So I've had clients say we were under contract for new construction homes. Now we're getting near the completion of the build process. And when we signed, we were at 3, maybe 4%, and now we're at 6% interest rate. And that is a
Yeah.
significant increase in monthly
Yes.
payments. And that changes a lot of
Yes.
situations. So
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
right, right. So I think right now we're just trying to figure out what's the best solution and so forth. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. So if you're already tuned in, if you're following, stay tuned, because we're going to be more so sharing not only, okay, this is kind of what we're seeing, but also, well, what do you do? Because how do you succeed?
Yeah. How do you succeed? That's what we want to know. We want to know, how do we win?
Right, right. Because we don't necessarily benefit if we can't figure out a solution, if we can't figure out a win for clients and so forth. So that's where,
Right.
we kind of put together the brain power to figure out what's next and what's the best solution.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, if you all do have questions or comments, feel free to comment on any platform that you're watching. We can see those. If you all do have questions, comments, concerns, feel free to chime in and let us know. But right now, I just want to hear from you and your opinion. What should people do when we think about solutions and pathways on the mortgage side? Right now, just thinking about housing affordability, and especially for first-time home buyers. So maybe you don't have equity coming from another property that you can utilize for down payment or closing costs and so forth. For many people, I feel like they feel like the ball just keeps getting kicked down the road, because
Yeah.
previously we were in COVID times where interest rates were low, but it was so much activity and so much competition that folks are like, I can't do this, I can't compete. And then now it's like, okay, well, competition's kind of cooling, but now the interest rates are going up to 6, seven
Right.
percent. So what do you do?
Yeah. So a few things that you can kind of consider. So, I mean, of course, I'm going to leave aside from just making sure that you're in a place where you can qualify for a home. So, obviously the key topics for those are like making sure like you're taking care of your credit, save, right? And then, making sure that you're watching your debts and not letting them exceed, what you're making in income, essentially. So that we already know that part. Well, we don't know it, but we're talking about if you're already there and you're in a place where you think that you might be close to being qualified, and maybe your shortcoming is the fact that your buying power is less because interest rates are higher, or you don't have enough saved, how you can navigate this market. So the first thing I'll talk about is, one of the great things about products are you have options to be able to lock in rates, especially like let's say you're going to do a new build, and you can lock it in for 12 months because you don't know where interest rates are going to go. So you could say, okay, you know what? At least I'll lock it in where it's at today. And then over time, if interest rates drop, then you can always go and get that lower rate at least one time throughout your contract, right? So if it doesn't drop and all they do is go up, you already got the low rate because they've gone up. So that's an option that's available to people, to be able to, they call it an extended lock, and you can go up to 12 months. And of course, it is credit specific because they want to make sure that you'll qualify even in 12 months because we're going to have to repull your credit. So you can't have somebody who's like right at the threshold, because what is that going to look like in 12 months? Then you have the locks where if you don't have an address, maybe you're still shopping, but you'll find a house within 90 to 120 days. You can do we call it a lock and roll, where you can lock it at the pre-approvals without a house, and then we'll roll it into the loan.
And that's
So
huge
that's an
right now
option.
for like a lot of vets. So I work with a lot of military families and so forth, relocating to Fort Hood. So,
Yeah,
we may be going through the process in a sense of where we haven't found that, the best fit home for them.
yeah,
But we have orders to come to Fort Hood. So we're coming here. Like, we're very motivated, committed buyers. So that can definitely be a benefit to at least kind of give yourself a little bit of a hedge in the sense of
yeah.
whatever
You
the
know,
market
and
may
let
do.
and let's say you didn't really have time to do either of those options. There is the option of where you can have, try to see if there's what they call is like the seller kind of helps,
Seller
with
concession.
that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to try to help. And you actually did that for one of your clients, right? Uh,
Mm. So this is why I say,
but
we work together. So, we,
yeah,
we, we can yin and yang this thing to
yes,
get
to
the
where
best
they can kind
deal,
of
best
help.
option.
Yeah, buy down, the interest rate to also help in your payment. So regarding payment and interest rate, those are a few options that will help you, with the interest rates going up. Another option is if you don't have a lot of money saved. This one you can't unfortunately lock in for 12 months or 6 months or 3 months because of the fact that it's down payment assistance and it may not be here tomorrow, especially in this market. The volatility has where one day there's an option available and then the next day it's not. The next day it's two options are available and then the next day one option. So like it just keeps fluctuating because again, nobody knows what's really going on. So you have people trying to mitigate risk the best that they can. So
Mm.
they're putting out what they have. And then the next day they're like, well, things change. So let's take this one away. Let's add this one. So with that, though, is that if it is available, then that option could be where it does give you a higher interest rate, but it allows you to be able to use funds to help you cover your down payment, to reduce the amount that you're going to need for your closing. So that's something that can help you with your closing costs. And I feel like I'm missing one other thing. Can you think of anything?
Don't rush. I'm finna say, because I was also gonna share, if you want to take a break just to, think and so
Yeah, I
forth.
was like, you go,
You've
and then
been
I
rolling.
like because it'll probably pop in while you're talking.
All good, no problem. Feel free to. So on the agent side, and this is where like it's so valuable to have conversations and have a relationship with both your lender and also your real estate agent when you're looking to purchase a property. Because your agent is going to write your contract. So there's some caveats and so forth. And we can still be knowledgeable of each other's field, but we each kind of have a specialty. So in my mind, one of those options is negotiating for seller concessions. And ultimately, these are funds that the seller essentially pays, but they're not coming out of pocket. So they only come out of pocket if the deal closes. So the
Yeah.
benefit to that is that means the seller is going to be walking away ideally with some proceeds. So there can be some wiggle room in that because otherwise, if they can't sell the property, then they get nothing. So the benefit of that is, hey, I'm a buyer. We need some help getting this to the closing table, and so forth. That's really a mutual win-win, which is in some regard is actually a benefit of a more balanced market because some folks are like, oh, we're having a shift, interest rates are going up. But in some regards, this is what a balanced market does because now the sellers aren't just like, I'm not paying anything, I'm not giving anything. I want it all. Matter of fact, I want it cash. And I want it closed
Yeah.
next week. It's like, okay, cool. Now it's kind of like, well, I can take that. We can work with that. It's like, can you just buy my house, please?
Yes.
So I can be
Please.
done and we can move forward and so forth. So negotiating seller concessions is huge because it really gives your lender some wiggle room to play with. So for me,
Yeah.
I'll negotiate that and that can be taken off of your closing costs directly when you come to close. So say you're gonna, close, your closing costs are $7,000 and we've negotiated $2,000, you can be coming to closing with $5,000. But how you
Yeah.
use that money can be kind of played with. So that can be used to buy down your interest rate. That can be used to, do an interest rate lock and cover any fees associated with that. You have quite a few options. That can be buying a home warranty and so forth. And we just have that covered at the closing table. So it's taken out of those funds. So you have a lot of wiggle room with that.
Yeah.
Also, title policy and survey are really big aspects. Like in Texas, for the average home, you're probably looking around like $1,800 to $2,100 for a title policy.
Yep.
It just depends on the price of the home. But otherwise, that's money that you would pay out of pocket at closing. And for those that aren't familiar, your title policy, just try to make it short, it's pretty much like an insurance policy to make sure the title is clear. And if there are issues with the title after you purchase the home, you have an insurance policy to figure it out, get it right, or pay and make it
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So you want that, but there's a fee associated with that. So again, putting that back on the seller is a really strategic opportunity. And in the past 2 years, it was kind of like one of those things where you could, the buyers could pay for that just to make it a bit more a stronger offer. But now, when you don't have multiple offers, that's actually a gold mine for buyers. Because that means it's kind of
Yeah.
like this is the one option you have if you want to sell your house. Is it make or break over $2,000 for you to sell this house? And for many sellers, they'll be like, that's fine, we'll take it. Let's make it work.
Yeah. Well, and to kind of piggyback on what you said, it's optimal for buyers, right? Because I'll go back to where I was saying people were apprehensive, to buy, but it's like this is the time where you should, especially if you don't have the 20,000, the 50,000 to be able to put over asking price. Because if you're waiting for interest rates to drop, so is everyone else, and if they do, then everyone else is going to be back in the market with you.
We go back
And
to the
now it's
frenzy of COVID era.
back to yeah, we're back to that highly competitive market where the sellers are like, nope, I'm not giving you anything. In fact, I want money over. And now you're back where you were at before because you're like, I don't have that cash to pay over.
Yeah, right.
So if that was your situation, this is like the perfect time for you, because yes, the interest rates are higher, but you can always refinance out of that interest rate later.
All right, and we can have a whole separate session on refinance.
Oh my gosh,
because
a whole conversation.
You need Angela. You need the finance. You need the finance person. Because even myself, again, agents we have our lane, and then otherwise, I'm like, you probably need to talk to a lender because this is really some aspect. I deal with the houses.
Yes.
On the finance tip, you need to contact a lender.
Yep. Yeah. Anytime they're like asking about houses, I'm like, that's not mine. Go over there. Wait, wrong way. Go over there.
So those are all helpful pieces there. But some other strategies, I even encourage people to consider USDA depending on the area.
Yep.
So especially for like first-time home buyers. So I try to help my clients see the bigger picture, especially if the goal is home ownership. Because your first home doesn't have to be your forever home. Actually, most people do not actually stay in their home and pay it off to close it. It's a very small amount of people that actually do so. So most
Yeah.
people either move out in 4 to 5 years, and at that point, you can rent out your property if it makes sense, and you can keep the property. You still own it, have tenants that give you some cash flow and are paying off your property, or you can go ahead and sell it and then cash in on your proceeds and move on to something else. So
Yep.
I try to encourage folks to utilize different programs like that. And for those that aren't familiar, USDA is $0 down. And in Texas, you'll be surprised what areas actually qualify. So you're not going to be in the city. It's for rural development. But like I'm in Central Texas, so people are surprised when I tell them all the areas. Like you may not be exactly in Waco, but you're a 15-minute drive. And
Yeah.
you hop on the highway and now you're there. But now you're a homeowner. And now you've started your process to building wealth. You started your process of home ownership. And now you have options moving forward. So I
Yep.
always encourage folks to consider that. And if there's ways to stack programs. So one of my big things that I also emphasize to my vets specifically is looking at the
Yeah.
T-Shack down payment assistance program, specifically the Homes for Heroes, which is active duty military, veterans, what is it, teachers, firefighters,
Yep.
EMT,
Firefighters,
police,
veterans, doctors, nurses.
all of those honorable fields. I mean, there are a
Yeah.
lot of honorable fields, but very
Honorable field.
all of
They
those
need one
honorable
for you.
fields.
They need one for real estate, right?
Right, right. So in that regard, you can stack those programs. So like, you really want to look at interest rates and make sure it makes sense. But for instance, for some VA clients, we may be doing a VA loan, so that's no money down. But there are still some closing costs associated with your VA loan.
Hmm.
And this is very specific because, and Angela, I might pass the baton as far as closing costs versus your down payment because it's a very common conversation that I have, especially with vets. Because we
Yeah.
may hear, oh, it's zero down payment for the VA loan. And even if folks hear about the VA funding fee, which is a one-time fee when you do close on a VA loan, that can be rolled into the loan. That's not necessarily all of your closing costs. So there are still some
Right.
aspects that you would need to come to the closing table with.
Yes.
But there are some
Absolutely.
ways to use some other programs. So I want to pass it over.
Yeah. So your closing costs, are going to consist of your property taxes, homeowners insurance, because those are things that the lender is going to pay for you. So you have to pay it sometimes all of it up front, and then they'll take it out of your monthly payment depending on when you're closing during the year. So you have those two things. You got your title fees because they got to make sure that your house is free and clear, that nobody came in and has claim to your house. So they're going to do all their work. And they're also like Switzerland, so they're going to make sure that all parties are abiding by the contract that was set forth. The monies are being exchanged. They're in charge of the monies to disperse it, to collect it. So there's fees for those. There's the lender fee, for me. There's fees if you're doing like any type of down payment assistance. There are fees that go with that. And then you have the appraisal to determine the value of your home. For your veterans, you got your pest, termite inspection that you got to make sure you get, survey, and then there's some like attorney fees, and that's because they put all the documents and stuff together for you. So all of that people don't realize is there's people that are working on your loan, so they got to pay them.
Right, right. It's a lot of behind the scenes aspects and a lot of
Yeah.
different parties that are touching these transactions between title company representatives, underwriters, your lenders, your agent, all these different individuals. So just thinking about
Yep.
those and saving for that, and also in some regards, like utilizing some programs if you qualify to offset some of those costs. So like for vets, if you have VA down payment, zero down payment, maybe you could also pair that with the T-Check program to cover some of those closing costs. So that way we can kind of try to get you to as least as possible at the closing table. And some people just aren't
Yep.
familiar with that. Um,
Yep.
or rolling it into your contract, which is different from rolling it into your loan. So for a lot of people,
Yes.
it's like, can I just roll everything into the loan? It's like you can't roll into the loan, but we can roll it into the contract. And
Yes.
basically,
Yes.
the difference in that is that the seller is paying that on your behalf at closing versus rolling something into the loan. You're rolling it into the loan, as in it's your responsibility. So that's the difference.
Yes. Yep.
Sometimes it's easy to get confused.
It is. I would have gotten confused if I wasn't in the industry.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But otherwise, as far as like just thinking about where do we go from here, what are some opportunities and so forth, I always encourage folks to not always necessarily look at the prettiest home on the block. That's the fresh new listing. Sometimes you can find your opportunities, especially in this market. We're looking for homes that have been on the market for more than 45 days. That's a
Yeah.
pretty significant number indicator where sellers may be a bit more motivated and a bit more open to negotiations than they would otherwise. And also just getting over some of the cosmetic pieces, which I must say myself as an agent can be a challenge sometimes because y'all, you would be surprised what paint can do. It's paint. You'd be surprised what light fixture changes and so forth can do. Like
Yeah.
I've added my own light fixtures, and if it's a light without a ceiling fan, I mean, I'm no electrician. I'm not going to encourage you to do certain things, but me myself, I have watched YouTube and I have figured out how to change out these light fixtures. So like
Oh
things
my
like that
gosh.
can be very easy DIY improvements that you can make to your property, and you'd be so surprised. Even changing flooring. Now, flooring, I don't mess with the flooring, but I have contractors. But you'd be surprised when you look at like the difference in affordability of a home and how much
Yeah.
those items could cost. It's like, okay, so it needs to be painted and change the floors. Oh, and change the light fixtures. And sometimes even the nice light fixtures that we see in certain houses, they're like the Project Source brand from Lowe's. And if you're not familiar, it's a very inexpensive and affordable, typically builder grade brand. So it's like, oh,
Yeah.
those lights are $20. I could buy a $20 light bulb, like light fixture, and put those throughout your home. That can be $120, $150 investment. That now you really do like the aesthetic piece of the home and so forth. So
Yeah.
just considering opportunities like that.
And like you said, the goal is home ownership, right? So like if you get into the home, you're in it for a few years, you can use your equity later, pull out equity from the home and make maybe upgrades that you've been wanting. Like maybe it didn't have the best bathroom in the world, but it's a bathroom. You're like, you know what, this is a nice bathroom. I could deal with this for a few years. And then when you get equity in your home, you can pull it out. Of course, there's a lot to requirements, a lot of requirements for that, but you can still do it, and you
Drop a
can get the
comment if
upgrade.
y'all want to if y'all want an extra episode on all about refinancing and cash outs and so forth.
Yeah, yes. Let me know. I'll definitely go over it with you. But yeah, you can take that money out and you can use it to, do the upgrades in your home, or use it to buy your next house.
All right.
Whatever you decide to do. But it's there, and that's the one of the beautiful things about owning a home is because you do get that equity.
All right. Now that's one of the big significant differences. So in the sense of you can live in
Yeah,
this place because we also need shelter. So we're going to be paying, or we need somewhere to live and for our family to live and enjoy
yeah,
life. So the fact that you can also build some wealth and some equity in that while also continuing to live your day to day life, I think that's one of the benefits. So right now it's definitely a shifting market, very similar to Angela, even on the real estate side. Because like right now we're seeing homes because I work with sellers as well where we're priced in range, say for comps, where we're looking at comparable homes that have sold and we're listed well, and then the home is sitting on the market a little while longer than it typically would. But some of that's also affordability and so forth. So just understanding like different shifts of the market, and that happens. So if you're gonna go into purchasing a home, understanding that is a thing that will happen, but having your finances secure, having that rainy day fund, and that's why it's such a big deal when I had clients that were like, "Oh my gosh, we're trying to get this mortgage." I asked them, "Do they want my leg?" Because they want bank statements. They want, I mean, like even myself. So we purchase our home. We do some other like some Turo aspects, leasing some cars on Turo. A car note payment or something popped up on the bank statement. They're like, what is this? It's not on the credit score. Like, we need to know this. I'm like, oh, man, it's on Turo. It's like, it's making money. It's making money. But it was a whole thing. But those are just different things to consider. And I will say, as far as we kind of wrap it up, that's one of the significant differences, at least for agents, when we look at and compare markets to 2008. Because I feel like 2008 is distant, but so like not that distant to where for many people, oh, it's about to be 2008 again. It's about to be 2008 again. But that's where you can look at equity rates, or how much equity that most people have in their homes already, and also just the qualifications to get a mortgage now are very different than what they may have been in 2008.
yeah. That's true. They put a lot of guidelines in place because they don't want a repeat of that. So the requirements did become more stricter. Now, have I seen them become a little bit more loose? Yes, but they're not as bad as they were.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, that's pretty much it for today. We're not going to keep you all too long. We want to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. But if you all do have more questions, feel free to leave us comments. We'll follow up, DM us. Angie Knows Loans on Instagram and social media, right?
Yes.
And AngieKnowsLoans.com. I love
Yep.
it. That's a great URL.
Thank you. Thank you.
It makes it easy when I'm texting over to clients. I'm like, what is that? Oh, Angie Knows Loans. Here you go.
Yes.
There you go. And if you need to reach out to me, feel free to go to DomMcShan.com, Dom, DOMMCSHAN.com, or DMAC_the Realtor. Thank you all so much for tuning in for this Whiskey Wine Down, and shout out to Angela Carter for joining us today.
Yes. Thanks for having me.
All right, you all. Take care, and we'll see you all next time. Peace.
All right. Bye.